tava aqui, ó, nos 64.500. Agora tá 64.313. Que é esses cones? Tava aqui, ó, 340. É porque aqui é em dólar, lá é em real. Aqui em real. Aqui a cotação tá em dólar. Nós tava aqui, ó. Ontem nós tava aqui, ó. Eu até marquei aqui, ó, a posição. Falei que não. Olha o tanto que caiu.
Predator nation. We made stuff. Now we're the world's biggest debtor nation. We hardly make anything except debt. And so everything is distorted, Charles. I mean, up is down, inflation is good. Our economy is like an airplane flying without an altimeter because we have no price signals based on real interest rates, and we haven't for a long time. Instead, we have a system where insiders print money and they benefit. They create disproportionate access to capital with low interest rates. And that capital goes where? Into stocks of companies that have no real growth. They just use easy government money to finance debt and buy back shares and create synthetic growth in these market bubbles. They buy up real estate and turn the country into renters. I mean, inflation sucks the life out of workers and savers, and it benefits the asset holders. So all of a sudden, we have this ballooning wealth inequality and politicians who contributed to the problem, who have no clue about basic economics, saying, hey, I'll come fix it by spending and handing out more easy money. It's like the government cripples you and then hands you a crutch and says, aren't you happy I was here to hand you this crutch, right?
Yeah.
That's why Bitcoin is so great. You can't print more of it. It's programmatically scarce hard money. And as my friend Preston Pish said very well today, Bitcoin literally feasts on corruption and manipulation, and boy, is the plate full, Charles.
You know,
Todos os períodos.
the main focus for the 2024 bull run. When you have projects like Superverse, Ronin, Beam seemingly coming out of nowhere and 10xing in a matter of months, you would have to be blind not to see the massive upside in these categories compared to others in the crypto space. But as we all know, the problem truly lies in finding the hidden gems in a market filled with copy-paste projects or just people trying to run off with your money at the end of the bull market. I'm not saying this to stop you from investing in the space. What I'm trying to get at is if you're actually looking to have a chance of making those 10x, 20x, or even 100x gains, the project firstly needs to be in its early stages, appeal to a wide audience, but also provide a solution to a problem that has not yet been solved. And the biggest problem in the crypto gaming space by far is that the games the play to earn model is attached to just flat out suck. But what if I told you there was a project in its early stages taking the initiative and solving exactly that? A project that actually understands what people want is to play their favorite AAA games and earn while doing that. Not hop on a game that if the play to earn aspect was not there, they would have never even considered. Therefore appealing to actual gamers, not just crypto guys. The project I'm talking about is called Neoxa, an all-in-one play to earn gaming platform that connects directly to your Steam, Microsoft, Epic Games, whatever account, and lets you play games like GTA 5, CS2, Fortnite, Dota 2, etc. and earn their native Neoxa coin through that. It operates on a mixture of proof of work and proof of game, which combines both the mining communities and gaming communities into one, which have been at odds at each other ever since the demand for GPU power started skyrocketing. But it doesn't stop there, because Neoxa also allows their users to take their tokens and create smart nodes and earn passive income through providing liquidity on the blockchain. Combine that with a dev team that are constantly tweaking and adding new things like the currently under development marketplace, the future looks very bright for Neoxa. But don't just take my word for it. Try to platform out yourself and think about if this continues to do what it has been doing so far, which is combine modern gaming with crypto, not just some mini clip browser games, and the hype and demand surrounding the crypto gaming space keeps growing exponentially as it has, it's only a matter of time before this small cap under the radar project
Esse aqui é Yar também, né? Yar, né? Por falar Yar, mas é Yar. 2 horas, 17 horas, 2 dias, 17 horas, 39 minutos, 45, 43, 42 segundos para o Halving. Deu uma caidinha aqui. subiu quase 2%, cara. Eu acho que só hoje. Que ver o que tá. A cadeira tá rendendo tanto. Meu Deus. Só mexer um pouquinho que ela já rende. Vou traduzir sua mensagem, só um minuto. Não entendi o que você falou, mano. Vou traduzir aqui.
I do not understand. I do not understand.
Entendeu? Yes. Deu uma queda brusca, R$ 1.000. Tava em 40. 2.000, quase 2.000. 1.900.
$1,900 fell. $1,900 fell.
Ainda bem que tá excelente, mano. A conexão tá excelente, não tá travando. Graças a Deus. Tava aqui, ó. Eu vou marcar de novo. Marcar aqui, vamos ver. Aqui. Esse. Tava aqui, ó. Marcar uma cor verde limão. Eu gosto de verde limão. Verde limão, grossura tá boa. Aí, ó. Me saber onde bateu. Põe um rostinho, coraçãozinho. Aqui, ó. Aí sim. Verde aqui, vamos ver.
A guerra não está ganha, mas está em caminho de ser ganha. Olha, Rubens, esse é um ponto importante, talvez seja de fato o tema mais importante do cenário econômico hoje, né, no mundo nesse período pós-pandemia, porque a inflação, no fim, foi o efeito colateral do combate à pandemia. O combate à pandemia teve isolamento social, que diminuiu a produção, né, de produtos, né, e serviços, e muita transferência de renda para famílias e empresas que gerou muita demanda, né? Então era muita demanda de um lado e falta de produto do outro, os preços subiram. Durante um bom tempo, esse não era o foco da política econômica global, ainda o foco era combater a pandemia, mas a partir de 22, quando a pandemia foi ficando para trás, né, e sobrou inflação, o foco passou a ser arrumar a casa e trazer a inflação para baixo. E eu acho que, olhando principalmente a dinâmica no ano passado, a gente viu os índices de preços dos Estados Unidos, da Europa, mas aqui no Brasil também, saindo de perto de 10%, 12% para casa dos 3%, 4%. E os bancos centrais, como você falou, pisaram no freio, subiram os juros. Havia muito receio, né, de que aquela alta rápida dos juros provocasse uma recessão global. Então o mundo continuou crescendo, ainda que num ritmo menor, e a inflação caiu. Na minha visão, esse processo foi incompleto, porque nós normalizamos a produção, né, as cadeias de produção, nós normalizamos a política monetária, mas nós não normalizamos a política fiscal. Os gastos públicos continuaram muito acelerados nos Estados Unidos, na Europa e no Brasil. Então sobrou digamos, um rabicho de inflação aqui que está mais teimoso, né? Está mais difícil de reduzir. A inflação caiu, mas ainda não caiu para um nível que era antes da pandemia, e eu acho que o que falta é equacionar as contas públicas.
In $1,000 trillion, then there's just no reason why Bitcoin should become 10 to 20% of that. And that gets you to a number, $10 million a Bitcoin, when we're 20% of the world's wealth in today's dollars. You got to just look at the total world wealth. And if the total world's wealth is 900 trillion, $1,000 trillion, then there's just no reason why Bitcoin should become 10 to 20% of that. And that gets you to a number, $10 million a Bitcoin, when we're 20% of the world's wealth in today's dollars. You got to just look at the total world wealth. And if the total world's wealth is 900 trillion, $1,000 trillion, then there's just no reason why Bitcoin should become 10 to 20% of that. And that gets you to a number, $10 million a Bitcoin, when we're 20% of the world's wealth in today's dollars. You got to just look at the total world wealth. And if the total world's wealth is 900 trillion, $1,000 trillion, then there's just no reason why Bitcoin should become 10 to 20% of that. And that gets you to a number, $10 million a Bitcoin, when we're 20% of the world's wealth in today's dollars. You got to just look at the total world wealth. And if the total world's wealth is 900 trillion, $1,000 trillion, then there's just no reason why Bitcoin should become 10 to 20% of that. And that gets you to a number $10 million a Bitcoin when we're 20% of the world's wealth in today's dollars. You got to just look at the total world wealth. And if the total world's wealth is 900 trillion, $1,000 trillion, then there's just no reason why Bitcoin should become 10 to 20% of that. And that gets you to a number $10 million a Bitcoin when we're 20% of the world's wealth in today's dollars. You got to just look at the total.
We'll start with today's ETF flows, and then we'll cover some of the latest news. And then I want to talk about some speculative stuff about what's going to happen in the market over the next couple of years. Now, in today's flows, you had GBTC selling about 1,800 Bitcoin, and you also had BlackRock purchasing about 1,200 Bitcoin. It was a quiet day after a rough weekend for Bitcoin in general, with the price dipping to around 63K. What's some positive news over the weekend? Hong Kong asset managers released press releases saying they've been given the green light to offer spot Bitcoin. This is exciting, but it's a little unclear how bullish this is. The actual Hong Kong market is small. What's going to matter here is the extent to which mainland Chinese can buy these ETFs. Mainland Chinese can buy some ETFs in Hong Kong via a program called the Shanghai Hong Kong Stock Connect. There's another approval process for an ETF to be accepted onto the Connect, so it's still a little bit early for this one. Now, zooming out and looking at some other interesting analysis happening in the market, Willy Woo put out his analysis or predictions for the top and bottom of Bitcoin in the coming years based on his estimates of market flows from the ETF provider. And he did this based on his analysis of the historical market value to realized value of Bitcoin. Well, first of all, what do we mean by that? The realized value is how much money has actually been invested in Bitcoin. Right now, Willie estimates that we've got a market value of about 1.25 trillion, and we've got a total invested in Bitcoin of about 550 billion. And this is estimated based on on-chain transaction data and the time of transactions and the market price at a given moment in time. Now, the reason why we look at this is because we can look at historical data in bull markets and bear markets to kind of get an idea of potential tops and bottoms in Bitcoin. In a bull market, historically, it tends to be around 5 to 6 times the realized value, the invested value. And in the bear market, it bottoms around 7% of the realized value. So the question is, how much money is going to flow into Bitcoin over the next few years? Well, Willie thinks we could see about 2 trillion in assets coming into Bitcoin via these ETFs, primarily based on the understanding that asset managers have about 100 trillion in assets under management, and they're trending towards a 2% allocation. So if you think about a realized value of an additional 2 trillion in the market, so 2.5 trillion invested in Bitcoin, at a 5x multiple on that, you'd be looking at a market cap of about 12 trillion in Bitcoin, implying a Bitcoin price up towards 560,000. And then, if you will think about where would it bottom in Bitcoin, you'd be looking at about 70% of that realized investment. And so Willie estimates that there might be a potential bottom around 90K. What's interesting here with Willie's analysis, this is a much more conservative model, the kind of market value that could come from 2 trillion invested in Bitcoin. We know from other analysis, for example, Bank of America estimates 100 times multiple on Bitcoin flows coming into Bitcoin. Now, my feeling here is that Willie is being very conservative on his multiplier effect on the flows, but perhaps being a little ambitious about assuming 2 trillion invested in Bitcoin. Maybe eventually, but I would say in the next couple of years, if you like, in this cycle, I think we're going to see 100 to 200 billion invested in Bitcoin. I tend to think that the multiplier effect of this 100 to 200 billion will be larger. We might end up seeing a similar price that Willie predicts,
I wouldn't at all be surprised if we do see that kind of 500,000 level in Bitcoin over the coming years. We're going to watch the flows, see how the price reacts to it over the time, and then we can kind of adjust the prediction as we go. But that's what I'm thinking right now. We'd love to hear what you guys think.
All right, folks, we know that cryptocurrency also runs on a lot of the same drivers as gold, but the sour grapes camp now starting to have a little bit of fun at the expense of the Bitcoin camp, saying the moment of truth came and it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Well, my next guest has a reason for that. I want to join bringing out Pomp Investments investor Anthony Pompliano. So the last couple of days, right, there was an invasion, the Iranians, launched, and Bitcoin was supposed to go up and went down. There, it doesn't work. Well, I know you're hearing this from a lot of people.
I love it. The last halving, we're 4 years later. It was $8,000. Today it's $64,000. Name another asset that's performed that well over a 4-year cycle. You can't. And so when people see Bitcoin go down on Saturday, they say, oh my God, Bitcoin went down. Well, so did gold, and so did every other financial market that was open. When there's these uncertainty events around geopolitical kind of invasions and attacks and rumors, et cetera, investors sell anything that's liquid for dollars. If you go back to COVID, that's what we saw. People dumped every asset. They wanted dollars, and everything sold off. It's a liquidity crisis. But now what will happen is on the way back up, Bitcoin will be the leader in the recovery. And my guess is that it will continue to perform just as well as it did the last 4 years for the 4 years to come.
Some of the things I was just talking to Rebecca about, these are real issues. And I was introduced to Bitcoin by people who believe that the U.S. government has lost its way. The John Stossel camp. Our offices are on the same floor. I wish I'd listened to him as assistants, right? I'd be as rich as you are. But, I always find it odd that, that the two folks, they're always arguing amongst each other when it feels like the same drivers of valuation are underpinning both.
I actually think that what both assets hold
So the last couple of days, right?
Even a month, that's probably a fool's errand. Instead, what you should think about this is a savings technology. If you simply continue to dollar cost average into a great asset that you can hold for the long term, it sounds a lot like Warren Buffett. It sounds a lot like the value investors. And so Bitcoin, in my opinion, is a great asset. And the people who dollar cost average into it with a portion of their portfolio and hold it for the long term are going to do quite well.
What percentage of your portfolio is in it?
More than 50%.
More than 50%. Okay. Before I let you go, then, because we got geopolitics and we have U.S. politics. It doesn't matter which administration wins, because my greatest fear for cryptocurrency, particularly Bitcoin, is that ultimately the U.S. will try to outlaw it.
They may. I don't think that they'd be successful in doing that. What we've actually seen is in countries around the world that have outlawed the ownership or trading of the asset, actually adoption has gone up, which is pretty interesting. But I don't think that the administration necessarily matters, other than both administrations, Republican and Democrat, are going to be a tailwind for Bitcoin adoption, because ultimately both administrations, Republicans and Democrats, they continue to contribute to the national debt. They continue to contribute to
So they contribute to the value proposition. But when I hear Elizabeth Warren, when I hear Bernie Sanders, it seems to me that if they get a chance, particularly if they had control of the Congress and the White House, that they would actually do something, block this thing off. You're not concerned about that?
I think that Larry Fink and a bunch of people on Wall Street now would have a different opinion, and we'll see who wins that battle.
All right. So next step, where are we going now? Just keep buying, keep dollar averaging, and just ride it out. Ride through these wild swings. These are wild swings.
Usually in these bull markets, the average drawdown is about 15%.
Right.
So far, it's only been about 5 cents.
Great stuff.
Welcome back to the show. Joining me this week is Steve Berry, New York Times bestselling author and #1 bestselling international author. Steve, I'm so excited to talk to you because prior to reading The Atlas Maneuver, your latest work, I don't think I've read a novel where Bitcoin. Welcome back to the show. Joining me this week is Steve Berry, New York Times bestselling author and #1 bestselling international author. Steve, I'm so excited to talk to you because prior to reading The Atlas Maneuver, your latest work, I don't think I've read a novel where Bitcoin was at the center of the plot. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I don't think there is one unless someone can point it out to me. I looked around and I don't know of one where Bitcoin is the plot of the novel. This is what the Atlas Maneuver is all about.
Well, I can't wait to get into it. But first, can you give us a little bit of your background? Because I read that you were a trial attorney for a very long time, and then all of a sudden you're writing thrillers. And I would love to hear how you built your career, because there were many books that preceded this before Bitcoin.
Yeah, I was a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 30 years. I was a trial lawyer. I practiced in a small town, so I did all the everyday stuff, adoptions, loan closings, corporations, wills, all that. But I did a lot of divorces, thousands of divorces, a lot of criminal defense, anything in the courtroom. I was in the court probably 2-3 days every week. So that was my main thing, was as a litigator. Along the way, I got a little bug and I got a little voice in my head. And every writer I've ever met tells me the same thing. They have a little voice in their head that tells them to write. Now, it doesn't say write a bestseller or sell a bunch of books and do all this. It just says, I need you to sit down and just write. I don't care how good it is. I don't care how bad it is. I just need you to do it. Well, I ignored that voice all during the 1980s. And then finally in the summer of 1990, I listened and I wrote a novel. It was about this tall, which is not good. It should be about this tall. It was 170,000 words. It was pretty horrible, pretty, embarrassing to read, and the way it's written and everything. But it's the only manuscript of mine I kept. I actually still have it. It's right over here in the cabinet right here. And,
wow.
And the reason why I kept it was because it's probably the best thing I'll ever write in my whole life. And the reason for that is because I started it and I finished it. The vast majority of writers do not finish what they start. And I know this from teaching over 3,000 writers around the country. So it's hard to get writers to finish what they start. But I finished it. It was awful, but I did. I wrote 7 more manuscripts after that over a 12-year period. 5 went to New York houses. They were rejected 85 times. I made it the 86th time 12 years after I started. So mine was a long process to get published. And I started writing in 1990. I published in 2003.
Wow.
So now we're in the 21st year of publishing, and we have 26 novels and 26 novels is what we have right now total.
Wow, I find these stories to be really inspiring, but also fascinating. So I have 2 questions. Number 1, why did you stick it out? Why did you keep writing amidst sort of the rejection? And number 2, why do you think the book was finally published? Like, do you think it was a matter of just the right publisher? Your writing had evolved? How did that work?
Well, I kept writing because of the little voice in my head. That's what keeps you going. The little voice just nags at you. If I don't write, it nags at me and drives me crazy. So if I write, it shuts up. And that's what it is. Now, you're born with the little voice in your head, but you're not born knowing how to write. You have to learn the craft of writing, and that takes time. And it took time for me to learn that. How I got published is very simple. Nothing changed for me, but the world changed. That's what happened. In 1990, the Cold War ended. The Berlin Wall fell. The Soviet Union collapsed. And the spy novel died. It just basically went away. By the mid-90s, it was dead. By 2000, it was cold and buried in the ground. That genre had ended pretty much. Then, in 2002, Random House bought a book from an unknown writer, a guy who basically failed in his first 3 novels. But the 4th book was a little different. It was action, history, secrets, conspiracies. It's called The Da Vinci Code.
Oh, wow.
They bought the book for that. they were looking for books to go with that. Now, this is a year before it's published, so nothing's happened yet. And guess what I was writing? Action, history, secrets, conspiracies. So on the 12 years after I started, on the 86th time, I was at the right place at the right time with the right book, and I was there. And I tell people all the time that I'm the perfect example of don't quit. Stay in the game. Stay in the game. Keep playing. You may strike out, but keep swinging. One day you'll hit the ball.
I love that. Okay, so your latest book is The Atlas Maneuver, and all of those components, those themes that you just listed are in there. It's a Bitcoin thriller. So first of all, why did you decide to write a book about Bitcoin? Can you share a little bit about your Bitcoin journey?
Well, it was a concept that I knew absolutely nothing about, but I was fascinated by it. It's interesting. It was just very this is intriguing. This is like when the 49ers back in the 19th century went out west and started panning for gold in a stream, or they dug in the ground looking for a gold vein. Sometimes they hit a vein, sometimes they don't. And sometimes they're in the wrong place, sometimes they're in the right place. It's very similar to Bitcoin with the equations and solving the equations and getting them done, and you gain a reward for that if you do it correctly. It was just fascinating to me. The whole concept was. And then as I looked at it more and more, I began to discover that there might be a tiny little flaw in the system, a little flaw in the Bitcoin system, which is very interesting. To exploit that flaw, though, you need a lot of money. You need a lot of money. So I made sure to give my bank a lot of money. And it comes from a World War II treasure known as Yamashita's gold, which is real. And what happened to that gold after the war, which is real. And I just tweaked it a little bit, and put it together and created the Atlas Maneuver to sort of exploit that little flaw in the Bitcoin system. The anonymity that you have with Bitcoin is wonderful, but it cuts two ways. It's a two-edged sword. It can cut two ways. And I wondered about that. And I talked to some Bitcoin folks who do this for a living, who are very knowledgeable about Bitcoin. I explained to them, am I looking at this correctly? And they said, yeah. But it'd take a lot of money, is what they said. Nah, that's no problem. I can get a lot of money. We can make that happen.
Coin Stories is brought to you by BitDeer, where the power of Bitcoin mining is at your fingertips. As a publicly traded leader, BitDeer's global reach and scale means they're everywhere you need them to be, ensuring you're part of the thriving Bitcoin economy. BitDeer's not just mining, they are industry pioneers, and BitDeer stands alone as the only vertically integrated, technology-focused Bitcoin mining company. What does that mean? Well, they're not just deploying, but developing the latest tech to make Bitcoin mining more efficient and effective. With the industry's most experienced leadership team, innovation is in their DNA, and it shows, with a quarter of their workforce dedicated to research and development, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in Bitcoin mining. Now they're leveraging years of expertise in data center and cloud management into high-performance computing through a recently announced partnership with NVIDIA. Join BitDeer in reshaping the world of Bitcoin mining. Learn more at bitdeer.com and explore how they are pioneering the future today. So fascinating. I mean, you did incorporate so much history. You explained Bitcoin mining. You explained gold, the history of money. You even, you talked about countries adopting it. And one thing that I want to ask you about, and I hope this doesn't give away too much because I won't say the characters' names, but you decided to give an identity to Satoshi Nakamoto.
I did.
And it's a woman.
Oh, of course.
Why?
Well, it just worked out well. It worked out the way I plotted the novel. And we'll have to walk careful here, so I don't want to give anything away. But her being that works perfectly to make the plot work, to go together. And the great thing about Satoshi Nakamoto, we don't have a clue. We don't have a clue who, what, it. It could be it could be a group, it could be we don't know. And so I can do anything I want to with it. And so I just created my own version of Satoshi Nakamoto.
Was she inspired by anyone in your life?
No. She's purely a fictional character. Purely fictional characters. And so, it came out nice. She's named after, a neighbor of ours, Kelly Estes.
Yes.
So,
I know Kelly. Shout out to Kelly and Brian. I love them.
Kelly Austin is her maiden name.
Yes. Okay.
That's where it came from. And then Susie Baldwin, who is the other name of that character, is a neighbor also who lives down the street. So
okay. Well, spoiler alert. We don't want to share too much. Okay. Did you have a goal of educating people about Bitcoin through this book? Because one thing that I think is really missing in the space in terms of educational resources is really incorporating fictional storytelling, and sometimes that's the best way to teach concepts and themes to people. So was that your goal, is to help people better understand Bitcoin in maybe a more simple, approachable way through a fictional story?
It was definitely one of the goals. My primary goal was to entertain you. And while I'm entertaining you, if I can teach you something along the way, that's great. That's the way all my novels are like that. They all have that in there. And this was no exception to that. I wanted to try to explain Bitcoin in a simple, easy way and show it so you can see how it works. And I've had a lot of people who've read the book over the last month who've communicated with me and spoken to me and said, I didn't have a clue. Now I do have somewhat of a better understanding of what Bitcoin is. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to just give some knowledge, and not just use Bitcoin as just it's just something, oh, we paid in Bitcoin, or we did this in Bitcoin. No, Bitcoin is the actual plot. The whole novel centers around Bitcoin, and the Atlas maneuver itself is centered around Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how you wove it through the whole book. Why do you think Bitcoin's so important?
Well, it's just another example of money and wealth and the transfer of it between individuals. We've been doing it for 2 millennia, or longer. And there were all kinds of things they used to trade. They trade, salt, cattle, pieces of iron, everything. All these things had value, and they traded them for other things of value. Because you hear that all the time. Well, Bitcoin, what is it? I don't know what it is. It doesn't really exist. Well, it does exist. It exists up here. And you exist. It exists in you. If you believe it has value, and the other person you're talking to believes it has value, then it has value. And now you can do it. So it's just another means that man has devised to transfer wealth among ourselves. And it's just the latest example of it. And it's clever. It's clever. It's fascinating. Blockchain was revolutionary. It altered the course of everything. And what did they do? They gave it away. Imagine if they kept blockchain and sold the rights to it. I mean, they didn't do that. They gave it away. So it's really quite remarkable, the whole thing.
Yeah, and you talk a little bit about that, about how money is in some ways this shared belief system. And so when something is not tangible at all, it really kind of does rely on all of us trusting this very intangible digital thing. One thing I remember kind of noting towards the end of your book is one of the characters said that Bitcoin is like a religious experience. And then you kind of went to explain that. And I was wondering if you can touch a little bit on that, because I felt some religious undertones throughout the book. And when I was reading a little bit about your biography, I don't know if this is true or not, but I read that a nun gave you kind of like the inspiration and grittiness to pursue writing and publishing. Is that the case? And can you talk about why Bitcoin is a religious experience?
Well, I went to Catholic school, so the nuns taught me discipline, and they taught me how to stick with something. They taught me how to, if you start something, you finish it. And I learned all of that from the nuns. And so that came into play when I was, 35 years old, and I decided to write. All of that was there in my brain. So I used what they taught me to teach myself the craft of writing. And that was very important. It was a very important thing. And as I talked to Bitcoiners, and I talked to quite a few Bitcoiners when I was researching this novel, and it always struck me that they almost had a religious experience themselves. It was something they deeply believe in. Now, you got to have faith in it. There's no question about that. The value of Bitcoin is determined solely on what someone else will pay for it. So everyone's got to have faith in it. It has a lot of religious undertones to it, and I don't mean that it's a religion. I mean that it's the same kind of principles are involved. That you have to have faith, you have to believe in it, and when you believe in it, you make it work, and it works for you, and it does something good for you, and it makes you feel better. And that's what religion does, and that's kind of what Bitcoin does for people.
Yeah, it was, I loved when you kind of described the fact that it is sort of this very selfless movement rooted in truth and in no one getting a special advantage. And it is anti-establishment, but only in the sense that it's because the power should be with us. It's something greater than all of us that connects us, which I think even if you're not religious, you can sort of resonate with that.
In the end of and we won't give anything away, but the novel sort of culminates in an upbeatness.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the process of writing this like? Because there might be people watching this who maybe they want to write a book. I'm actually in the process of potentially writing a nonfiction book, so a little bit different. But what's your advice? How does this process work for you? I've talked to some authors who, they have to like shut themselves in a room and really, really focus. Some people can do it in like a weekend. They can do book sprints. Some people take years to write. What's your process?
Well, mine is slow. I'm like a tortoise. I'm a slow and steady person. So it takes me a year to write the novel. This was no exception. This took a year to write the book. I try to do 1,000 words a day, and that's a good goal for me. 1,000 words a day works very well. So I stick with that, and I keep that experience in play. And writing is not an obsession. You don't get obsessed with it, but it is a discipline, and you have to have a discipline. I work best in the mornings, so I do